All right, so we've got this stack of articles you sent over about AI and software development, and I gotta say, you've piqued my curiosity with this one. Seems like you're really interested in how AI is changing the game for developers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
fast-moving game too. I think what's really got me interested is how AI is, it's no longer just a buzzword in this field. It's really reshaping how software is built, like right now.
Yeah, and it's evolving so quickly, it's easy to get lost, I think, in all the headlines. But from what I'm seeing in these articles, it seems like AI is kind of moving beyond just automating simple tasks, and it's getting genuinely collaborative.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. We're really seeing AI emerge as a true teammate for developers. Take a code review, for example. Instead of manually combing through lines of code, imagine having an AI partner who can identify potential bugs, vulnerabilities in real time.
Man, that's got to be a huge time saver. And I think some of these articles mention some specific tools that are doing this.
They did. One that comes to mind is Google's AutoML. And this one's really interesting because it's essentially like AI building AI. It automates the development of machine learning models, which has always been really complex and time-consuming.
Okay, so I have to admit, the idea of AI building AI, that does make my head spin a little bit. But for developers, this translates to faster development times, fewer errors, and more time to focus on the creative aspects of building software, right?
Precisely. And it's not just Google doing this. Microsoft has Visual Studio IntelliCode, and this uses AI to give developers these intelligent code suggestions while they're typing, almost like having, a coding buddy who can anticipate your next move.
So instead of getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty, developers can focus on the bigger picture, like innovation and building the next generation of incredible software.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about these incremental improvements here. Your research pointed to some seriously game-changing potential benefits. Companies like even Amazon are seeing massive boosts in productivity with tools like Code Whisperer.
I was reading about that one. That's the one that generates code suggestions based on your comments in existing code, right? Which sounds incredibly helpful. But I guess the question is, what about the smaller companies? Is this kind of technology only accessible to like these huge tech giants with really deep pockets?
Yeah, and that's a question that came up a few times in the research you sent. And thankfully, the answer is no. There are ways for smaller teams to leverage AI, even if they have limited resources.
I'm really glad to hear that. So, what are some practical steps that these smaller teams can take to get started with this? So, let's say, like, I'm a small startup founder, I've got this brilliant idea for an app, but a really limited budget. How do I even begin, to think about integrating AI into our development process?
Well, the good news is you don't have to build everything from the ground up, right? There are some really impressive open source AI tools out there, not to mention cloud-based platforms. They offer a lot of power right out of the box.
Okay, that makes sense. But even with the right tools, isn't there still like a learning curve to actually using AI effectively?
Well, absolutely. One of the big takeaways from your research was that training and upskilling, those are key. It's not enough to just have the tools, right? Your team needs to know how to actually use them well.
So it's almost like investing in your team's education is just as important as investing in the technology itself.
Exactly. And that investment can take a lot of forms. I mean, you've got online courses, workshops, maybe even bringing in like an AI consultant just for a short time. That can make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like this collaborative approach is really important, not just humans and AI working together, but developers, like upskilling and supporting each other. But okay, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about one of the things that always gets a lot of buzz when we talk about AI and software development, and that is code generation. Like, is it really possible to just tell an AI what you want and have it, write the code for you?
It's an area that's developing so quickly, and the tools are getting, I mean, seriously sophisticated. Think about Amazon's Code Whisperer, for example. It goes way beyond simple suggestions. It can generate entire blocks of code based on your comments and even your existing code base.
That sounds like honestly kind of a dream come true for any developer who's tired of like writing out the same boilerplate code over and over. But I do have to ask, if AI starts taking over those more basic tasks, what does that really mean for the future of like coding skills in general? Will developers still need to know how to, I don't know, code in the traditional sense?
Yeah, that's a huge question, and honestly, it's one that's causing a lot of debate right now. But instead of thinking about it as, AI replacing human developers entirely,
Hmm.
I think it's more helpful to see it as a kind of shift in the skill sets that are going to be most valuable.
So maybe instead of being like masters of syntax, Developers will need to become masters of strategy and design. Like they're guiding the AI to create the best possible software.
Exactly. They'll need to be able to really articulate their vision to the AI,
Mm.
understand what it can do, but also its limitations, and
Mhm.
make sure that the code it generates actually aligns with the overall goals of the project. It becomes more about the why behind the code, not just the how of writing it line by line.
That is a really interesting way to look at it. It sounds like this kind of shift could free up developers to really tackle more complex, more creative challenges. But I do want to address kind of the elephant in the room here. With all this talk about AI's potential, were there any concerns raised in the articles you were reading?
Absolutely. And it's really important to acknowledge both the exciting possibilities and the potential downsides of any technology this transformative.
So, what were some of the potential downsides, some of those challenges that kind of stood out to you as you were reading through all this?
Well, I think a really important one, and it came up a few times, was the whole question of data quality.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, AI models are only as good as the data they're trained on, right? So if the data is flawed, if it's biased in some way,
Good.
well, the output from the AI is going to reflect that.
It's like that old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And I think in this case, it's not just, inaccurate data, but we're talking about potentially harmful biases that could actually like creep into the software itself.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a really important point, and it sounds like a tough challenge too, because on the one hand, you've got this incredibly powerful technology, but then on the other hand, you've got this really weighty responsibility to make sure that it's being used ethically, responsibly.
Exactly. And I think that tension, that's something you see throughout the tech industry right now. Like, how do we
Mhm.
actually harness the power of this technology,
Yeah.
but in a way that mitigates the risks, make sure it benefits everyone, right?
Yeah. It's a huge question, and I think you're right. There are no easy answers. But, I want to shift gears maybe just a little bit. All this talk about AI's impact on software development, it kind of leads to, I think, a much bigger question, which is, will coding in the traditional sense, will that become obsolete at some point?
Oh man, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's hard to predict the future with, perfect accuracy. But if you look at where AI is going, I think it's pretty clear that the role of the developer, it's definitely evolving, right? It's less about writing every single line of code manually and more about guiding these AI systems, collaborating with them in a way.
So maybe less like writing a novel and more like directing a film, where you've got this incredibly talented cast and crew, but in this case, that's the AI, and your job is to kind of shape the creative vision, make sure the final product is a masterpiece, right?
Oh, I love that analogy. I think that really captures the essence of this change, this move towards something more strategic, more collaborative, and how we develop software.
It's a really interesting way to think about it. For someone listening to this right now, maybe they are a developer and they're thinking, okay, this is the future. I want to be ready for it. What advice would you give them? What are the skills that you think are going to be most valuable in this new world, this AI powered world?
Yeah, I think first off, I'd say embrace the change, right?
Hmm.
Because the core skills of a developer, things like problem solving, that ability to think critically, that passion for actually building things, those will always be in demand. But, if you want to stay ahead of the curve, there are a few things I think are worth focusing on.
Lay it on us. What do developers need to thrive in this new world?
Okay, well, first off, having a solid understanding of AI and machine learning fundamentals,
Yeah.
that's becoming more and more important, right? You don't need to be a data scientist,
Mm.
but just having that basic grasp of how this technology actually works, what its strengths are, but also, importantly, its limitations, that's going to be crucial.
So almost like being able to speak the language of AI so that you can effectively collaborate with it.
Exactly, yeah. And kind of related to that, I think being really comfortable working with large data sets, that's going to be huge. As AI becomes more integral to development, being able to manage that data, clean it, really extract insights from it, that's a super valuable skill.
Data as the new code.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
say that. And then finally, I always emphasize adaptability, right? That willingness to be constantly learning because the field is moving so fast
Mm.
that being able to adapt to new tools, new ways of working, that's absolutely essential.
It's like learning a new programming language, except in this case, the language is constantly evolving, which I guess makes it even more challenging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the most successful developers in this new era, they're going to be the ones who are adaptable, who are curious, and who are always willing to kind of push the boundaries of what's possible.
I love it. Well, there you have it, everybody. A deep dive into the exciting and always evolving world of AI-powered software development. And I think, as we've been discussing today, it's a future full of possibilities. But by embracing these changes, developing these new skills, developers can really be at the forefront of shaping this amazing new frontier.
Couldn't agree more. And who knows, maybe one day we'll have AIs co-hosting these deep dives with us.
Hey, as long as they don't try to take my job, I'm all for it. Thanks so much for joining us today for this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building the future one line of code at a time.